Hey everybody, welcome to J Stern Designs and welcome to the Prom Gown Sew Along. Today what I want to do is show you how to work with your beaded lace to create a lace design on top of the lace overlay. So I'm going to show you how to use individual motifs, cut them out, sew them to the lace overlay. Now in the previous tutorial where I show how to cut out and sew beaded lace, there's one step that I did not show that you may want to include when you're constructing the lace overlay. If you're going to be working with a lot of different individual lace motifs and you're adding a lot of weight to the lace overlay, the lace itself may need some support. So if that's the case, I would use a silk organza to underline the lace. And the way you would do that is you would cut out all the pieces like I showed in the video. Then you would cut out identical silk organza pieces. So you'd have your center front, your two side front, and your two back bodice pieces. And what you would do is you would lay the silk organza underneath the lace, baste it to create a single layer, and then sew it together like I showed. So since I didn't show you how to do that before, I'm just going to show you how to baste the silk organza to the lace. And I only have little pieces left of my lace, so I cut a piece of silk organza and I have a piece of beaded lace here, and I just want you to pretend that this is an actual cut out pattern piece. So this could be the side front, it could be the center front, whatever. So basically I'm going to thread a hand needle and I'm going to leave it double layer. I'm not going to tie a knot with the pieces laying, aligned with each other. So if these were cut out pieces, I would start in the middle and I would just take some loose big stitches, and I would sew out, just baste out to the edge. So I'm not moving the lace separate from the silk organza, and I would just stitch across, and then when I reach the end I would cut like that, and then I would go in another direction until I've basted center out, in all the directions. And then I might go also horizontally and vertically. Here I'm just going on the diagonal, but I just want to create the beaded lace and the silk organza sort of into a single layer. So that way I can treat it like it's all one. Okay, you can see from the wrong side that this is laying flat. And, feel free to baste as much as you think you need to be comfortable, that it's not going to shift around. But just know that you would do this before you would actually construct the overlay and make it into a bodice overlay. So all the vertical edges are also going to be secure at that point before you start working with the putting the lace motifs on. Okay, so the next step is you want to cut out the motifs you're going to use. These teardrops, I had 6 of them across the width of the yard that I bought. And you can see over here, there's a lot of tulle still hanging out on the edge. So before we work with this to sew it to the lace overlay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away the tulle. And basically, you want to get like about a 1/16 of an inch, within a 1/16 of an inch of your lace design. You don't need to get closer than that. And if you happen to nick your embroidery while you're trimming, have some fray check handy that you can treat the cut lace with, and that will keep it from falling apart. It'll essentially glue it back together. And this takes time, so just take your time and trim the tulle away. I'm just going to do a little bit so you can see. I like to use these little curved blade scissors. See how the lace just looks like it ends there? All right, and any little bit of tulle that's left is going to disappear into the overlay after you have it in position. Once you've got your tulle trimmed away, what you're going to do is you're going to place the lace motif on your overlay where you want it in position. And again, we're going to now base this to all the layers. So if you're working with the tulle and the silk, you're going to base through all the layers to hold it in place. I highly recommend laying out all of your different elements of your overall design on the lace overlay and then try it on to make sure everything is in position, because when it's laying flat in front of you, it could look straight and perfect, but then when you put it on, sometimes things are crooked or not spaced properly, or sometimes where you put them might not be attractive. So make sure you check the position of these things before you sew them on permanently. All right, so now I can base my motif into position, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to do a long running stitch top to bottom and catch all the layers. I think what I'm going to do, instead of cutting it and going across, I'm just going to stitch down to the side and then I'm going to stitch across. So I'm just going to sort of catch this like this. And then when I get to the middle of the design along the side, then I'm going to go across horizontally. Another thing to keep in mind when you're working on an overall design, you can add an element, try it on and see how it looks, and then you can build off that design a few motifs at a time. So don't feel like you have to plan out the whole overall design unless you're sure of what that's going to be, because sometimes what you think is going to look nice on someone's figure may actually need a little bit of adjusting as you go along. So don't be afraid to stop and say, well, wait a minute, I want to space these out a little bit more, or they should be touching, or maybe they need to be a little bit lower, a little bit higher. So definitely, you can definitely plan the design out start to finish at the beginning, but then feel free to edit it as you go along. So I sewed into place permanently the center front teardrop shape, and then I tried it back on Abby to make sure that looked nice, and then I checked in between to make sure that it was all working. Feel free to do that. So now that I've got my motif basted on, if you turn it over, notice that everything is just laying nice and smooth. You don't want the organza or the lace to be bunching up underneath the motif that you based it on. So always check the back to make sure that's all laying nice and smooth. Okay, so now I'm working with Madeira rayon thread that's a gold color, and I got a comment on my blog asking why I didn't use this to sew the overlay pieces together. I did my breaking test, and see the metallic thread is really strong. Okay, see how strong that is? Like I can't really even snap it unless I really pull. This rayon thread breaks really easily. So I wanted to make sure that the seams of the lace overlay were stitched with a stronger thread than this rayon. But because we're hand sewing motifs on, and we're using a lot of little stitches, I think using this rayon is strong enough. And actually I've already tested it because Abby wore it to the prom and it hasn't fallen apart, except where I used the snap. So that's why I didn't use the rayon thread to sew my pieces together when I was making my lace overlay. I did take the extra time to use a metallic needle and a little sewer's aid. So check that video out if you missed it, but that's why I didn't use the rayon, because the rayon is very easy to break. See, I can just very easily break it. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start here. I'll start at the top, and I'm just going to reach and sort of bury my knot underneath by weaving it through some of the heavier stitches that hold the beads on. Okay, so you can see that once I pull it to the knot, it stops and it's, it's secure. Then I'm going to bring it up to the top. So now my thread is up at the top. All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a few small stitches through all the layers right there to kind of help secure the knot. Like I'm just not going to start, moving around and sewing the edge. I'm going to take like 3 tiny stitches very close together. I'm going to work from under and come up near the edge of the lace motif like that. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to come up again near the edge of the lace motif. And basically that's how I'm going to work, the lace through, to sew the lace on. I'm just going to keep right around the edge like that, following along the leaf pattern. And I'm going to go down. Now when I stitch on top of the lace to go down, I'm going to follow the direction of the lace. So this is a sort of horizontal right here. I'm going to just take a tiny horizontal stitch, and what happens is the gold thread is just going to blend in with the lace itself and you're never going to see it. Okay, so when you're working on the top of the lace, make sure you're stitching in the direction that the lace is going. So if it's, vertical, go down vertical. And if it's horizontal, go down horizontal, and it'll marry right with the lace and you won't see it. See how that's virtually, you can't even see those stitches. All right, so basically you're just going to stitch all the way around like that. And the goal really is to tack down all the edges so, they don't lift off of the lace overlay. Now see, I'm going down this little vine right here. And instead of stitching across, I'm going to go down. So I'm keeping with the direction of the lace. And then I'll come back up a little ways away from it and stitch it down again. All right, so that's how you sew the lace motif onto the lace overlay. And you can see in the part that I've done, that's on there. See, it's not gonna pick away. You don't need to sew in the center because we're gonna cut away the excess lace from underneath after it's sewn on. Because you can see here, I've got big areas of tulle and I can see the beads and I can see the lace stitching through the tulle. After you've stitched it all down, the next step is to trim away. So let me show you how to do that. All right, I've stitched all the way around and you can see the stitching here. The next step is I'm going to pull out the basting because I want to be able to separate the layers so I can trim away behind the motif. And that's why I started at the middle of the piece and worked my way out, because now it's easier to just pull out these very short basting stitches versus dealing with one that's, all the way around. Okay, now I just want to preface what I'm doing with the goal of making a prom gown. This isn't a wedding gown. This isn't a couture garment. This is just quick and easy way to get the lace onto the dress and have it look nice. If I were making a wedding gown, I probably would take the time to smash all the beads, pre-mark the position of the motif and smash the beads that would be underneath. I didn't do that in this case because, again, I'm working on a prom gown. So the next step, trimming away the lace from behind the motif we just sewed on. Again, if I were working on something, that was going to be more special or, not a prom gown, I would take my time and I would trim away a lot more of it. So the goal for me right now, and the goal for when I was making Abby's dress, was to just remove this part of the underlay because I can see through in these big patches of tulle, I can see the beads and stitching. And it made a huge difference when I did that. And let's take a look at that. You can see, like, see how I just trimmed away in this circle area, and see how nice that looks? If you look really, really close, you can see I didn't trim in here. Okay, you can see those beads behind there. But as an overall effect, just removing the beaded lace from behind the center portion was enough to make a significant difference in how pretty it looked. And again, if I were making a wedding gown, I would have gone in and trimmed this much more carefully. My stitching would be much smaller. I would have taken much more time to sew this together. So I'm just bringing back the idea of keep in mind what your goal is. I've removed all the pins and all the stitching except for the stitching that holds the motif on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it apart so I can feel, you know, I've got my lace motif in this hand and I've got the organza and the underlay in this hand. And once I'm sure they're separated, I'm just going to make a little snip to make a hole like this. Okay, as you can see, I have a hole. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use that hole as a starting point to snip towards the stitching that holds the motif on. Then I can start cutting, you know, alongside of my handwork to hold the motif on, and see how it looks like this. And I'm just going to trim all the way around. I don't want to get too close, and I certainly don't want to clip my stitching. So I'm going to leave a generous allowance on the edge before my stitching. Then if I had time, I could go in and I can stitch it some more. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to cut this hole out before your motif is attached, because it can stretch the overlay out of shape and sort of distort the shape of your bodice. So it's really important to get the motif sewn on first before you cut the lace away from behind. Okay. All right, so you can see the hole that I've made. All right, and you're gonna wanna shake any of those beads out, you know, and make sure they're not caught between. All right, so see how nice that looks? You know, you can see that this is all single layer and it's cut away. And it almost brightens the inside of the lace motif because it doesn't have the double layer of tulle behind it. You know, that's how you cut the lace from behind, and that's how you work with it. All right, so that is a quick and easy way to trim your motifs, position them on a lace overlay, baste them on, stitch them on, and then cut the lace out from behind. If you have any questions about that, or if you have questions about creating your overall lace design, you can post questions below. You can visit my blog at J Stern Designs, and I'll be happy to help you. On Tuesday next week, I'm gonna show you how to use your strapless bra to help your dress stay up. So that's what we're going to work on Tuesday. And then Thursday is going to be Invisible Zipper Day. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week for the Prom Gown Sew Along.